Good morning, Wolfeboro. I'm Jonathan Bean from Wolfeboro Community Television, and today we're interviewing Officer Llewellyn.
Hey, Jonathan. Good morning. Okay, so before we start with the questions, Jonathan, I think I'd rather tell you a little bit about me, just so that we have it on record. So, as the school resource officer, I've been a police officer for coming up on 21 years. I graduated back from the 120th Police Academy back in 99, early 2000. I've been a detective. I've worked in various jobs in the police force, to include handling evidence, detective's job. I'm an accident reconstructionist. I also specialize in numerous, have specialty training in numerous child development and disability training and whatnot. But as a school resource officer is a sworn police officer that works in the school or is assigned to the school by the police department. Here in Wolfeboro, we have a number of schools that I cover, to include all the town schools as well as the technology center, and I also act as a liaison to Brewster Academy.
Who supervises SROs?
The SROs are directly supervised by sergeants that work for the police department, and they answer to the captain and the chief.
Can I speak or meet with the student resource officer at my school?
You can call if you need to meet with, want to schedule an appointment with me. You can call 569-2055. That's the phone number for Kingswood Regional High School.
Okay.
That's where my office is located. If I don't happen to be in my office at the time, you can leave a message on my voicemail, and I'll be happy to give you a call back.
Cool. Can I speak with or meet with the supervisor of the student resource officer at my school?
Sure you can. So the supervisors, again, would be probably a sergeant. It depends on which sergeant is assigned to the school resource officer at the time. But you can contact the Wolfeboro Police Department and ask for a sergeant, and they would be able to schedule up an appointment with you. They are not assigned to a particular school. They are assigned to the school resource officer himself or herself.
Now, which schools have school resource officers in the town of Wolfeboro?
The schools I cover all the Wolfeboro schools. I cover Carpenter, Crescent Lake, the middle school, the high school, and then again I have responsibility for the tech center because that's attached to the high school, as well as act as the liaison, as I told you, to Brewster Academy.
Right. Now, what are the specific roles and responsibilities of a student resource officer?
So, student resource officer, the primary responsibility is to maintain safety of the students and faculty within the school, and then also to provide a safe and positive learning environment, and to promote mutual respect between law enforcement, school staff, administrators, students, and then their families.
And what else do student resource officers do?
School resource officer, we assist school administrators in developing school crisis and emergency management and response plans. We also work with school staff in problem solving to prevent crime and promote safety in the school. We also participate in educational opportunities, such as teaching younger students bicycle safety, firearm safety, stranger danger. Older students will often teach about bullying, cyber safety, drug and alcohol abuse, state laws, and then obviously the constitutional rights.
Are school resource officers involved with student discipline?
We're involved in the disciplinary process only when it involves a crime, so we don't get directly involved with school discipline, but we may be contacted to attend a disciplinary hearing that is generally set up by the administrators and or school board.
who is responsible for school discipline if it's not you?
So school discipline is handled by the school administration. It can be handled by principal, assistant principal, school staff, and or the student coordinators here at the high school.
Okay. Who can refer matters to student resource officers and school resource officers?
Anyone can come to a school resource officer and report anything at any time. I have an open door policy where students are able to come to me at any time if they desire, same with staff, and report anything of concern, and we can hopefully help them work through any issues that they may have.
What kinds of student information do student resource officers have access to?
We have provided student information as needed to carry out our duties related to school environment. We may have access to directory information for all students in the SAU, and additionally items needed to carry out their duties as approved by the school administrators.
Does having a police officer in the school mean that any child is more likely to be arrested, go to jail, or get a criminal record?
Not at all. Our primary focus is to maintain safety in the schools for everyone, and to try and avoid arrest situations if at all possible. But we also have to balance the right of victims. If there was a assault in the school, or if there's a victim in a particular case, we need to make sure that the victim is not neglected, so we have to sometimes follow up and make sure that kids are charged in particular cases.
So what is restorative justice?
So restorative justice is a concept that recognizes juveniles will make mistakes but also need to be held accountable for their actions. Programs like the White Mountain Restorative Justice Program provide an avenue for juveniles to avoid entering the juvenile justice system while still accepting responsibilities for their actions.
Do school resource officers have the authority to detain and interview students?
Yes, we do. For criminal investigations and safety and security issues, we will interview and speak to your students, correct?
Okay. And do the students have rights when detained or under custodial arrest?
Yes, they do. Well, once we place them under custodial arrest, they do have rights. When we're just investigating, the rights don't come into play at that particular time. But once they are under custodial arrest, they have something that's called the Benoit rights. Benoit rights are very much similar to Miranda rights for adults.
Okay.
But they're kind of catered to juveniles as far as so that they're more understandable. But those are under effect once the juvenile is placed into custodial arrest. They may not be read if there's an exigent circumstances that exist, such as a crime of active violence in progress, which may threaten the safety or security of the school. That may trump a student's rights at that moment, but eventually they would be read their Benoit rights.
Do parents or legal guardians have rights when their child is questioned, searched, or detained by a school resource officer?
Yes. We will try and contact parents prior to custodial interviews. However, depending on the circumstances, the student might be advised of his rights and may decide he or she wants to speak to the police at that time. However, whenever there's a matter regarding the safety or security of schools in regards to the search question, the searches are based on probable cause and may not be delayed at that point.
And who will be present at the custodial interview of the students?
It will generally be the school resource officer, and we may have the legal guardian present where the custodial interview is conducted. The SRO will try, through conversation with the student, try to ascertain whether they have the cognitive ability to submit to questioning at that point.
Okay. And will school administrators be present when students are questioned?
It's possible, especially if the crime was committed at the school and affects the normal daily routine and operations at the school, then a school administrator would be included in those discussions, most likely.
Okay. Do school resource officers have the authority to arrest students?
Yes, school resource officers are sworn law officers, and they have the powers of arrest.
And under what circumstances will or school resource officers arrest the students?
By law, school resource officers are permitted to arrest for violations of state of New Hampshire laws. However, in some circumstances, they might choose to various diversion options, court diversion, oral counseling, or allowing the school to handle the situation administratively. Victims also have rights, though, and if a victim wants to move forward with court action, then the student more than likely will be charged at that point.
When can a school resource officer search a student's person or property?
Okay. Any search initiated by a school resource officer or law enforcement officer needs to be based on probable cause, and when required, a search warrant shall be obtained.
Can an administrator request a school resource officer to search a student's person?
No. School administrators have the right to search students based on reasonable suspicion, but they will not ask me. They know that, or a school resource officer, I should say, they know that school resource officers have a different, they have to have probable cause in order to be able to search a student and apply for a search warrant.
Right. And how can the public access data about arrests and interrogations?
They can contact the police department. There are reports put out on a monthly basis. They actually look just like this that I do to the chief and the captain and the police commissioners that show basically the stats of what I did for the month and any issues or problems or the number of arrests and that kind of statistical information.
How is the school resource officer program funded?
The school resource officer program is, as I mentioned earlier, I actually work for the police department, but it's actually funded. I get paid through the police department as a police officer, and then reimbursement is made to the police department through the school administrative unit.
Okay. What kinds of training do school resource officers receive to ensure that they are able to interact successfully with our increasingly diverse student population?
So officers that are selected for the school resource officer program will attend the NASRO training. Also, it's known as the National Association of School Resource Officers training, as well as ongoing training every year as allowed by the school district and the police department, so that they can, we receive numerous trainings such as mental health training, crisis intervention training, disability awareness training, restorative justice training, and alternate juvenile procedures. We also, a new thing lately is social emotional learning, and those are just a few of the trainings that we receive, as well as all the police training that we receive every year that we have to stay up to date on.
Do school resource officers receive training to interact successfully with students with disabilities or to include autism?
Yes, we're trained to deal with disabled students as well as receive autism awareness training.
And can I introduce my child with a disability to the school resource officer at the school to help him or her understand that my child has a disability?
You absolutely can. It's in fact, that's important for us to know, and we often will interact with school administration just to find out if a student has a disability before we start into an investigation, because that may play into whether we want to have a parent there, whether we want to have a social worker or somebody to support that particular student before we question them in regards to anything that's going on that involves the police.
So are truancy officers and school resource officers the same thing?
No. So truancy officer is tasked with the compulsory attendance law that has to do with the student attending school. Truancy officer also will handle, investigate cases that a student may live outside the district. But he's employed by the actual SAU. I am not. I do work closely with the truancy officer in some cases, in trying to help him identify kids that are at risk, as well as the administration also. It obviously works very close with them, but they're two separate jobs, because my job takes place here in the schools. His job takes place working with information in the schools and then going out and trying to establish why a student isn't attending, or why, if he's not a resident of one of our communities, why he's attending our school district.
Oh, okay. And now I keep saying student resource officer and you keep saying school resource officer. Is there any difference between the two, or?
No, really, because you say student resource officer, which technically is one of my responsibilities, to be a resource to the students. The actual name is school resource officer, but I do consider myself to be a student resource officer as well.
Okay, cool. I believe that's all the questions I have for you today. I believe that there was something you'd like to share.
Yeah, so I spoke to Captain Livy this morning at the police department, and I am getting ready to actually retire as the school resource officer here. I will be finishing out the end of this school year, and then next year, Officer Mary Swift will become your new school resource officer here at the schools here in Wolfeboro.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time here today, and
Thank
thank
you.
you
Thank you
for all you've done for our school.
Thank you. My pleasure.